Let's bring in Allan Lichtman to the conversation. Allan is one of the few who correctly predicted not only that Donald Trump would become president, he's also the author of the book, The Case for Impeachment, and he is standing by in Bethesda, Maryland. Good to have you with us, Allan. What do you think about this?
Look, this guilty plea exposes the Nixon-style cover-up of the Trump administration. First, it was deny everything. You know, there were no contacts with the Russians. That turned out to be a blatant lie. There were dozens of contacts with the Russians. Then, well, maybe there was some contacts with the Russians, but, you know, they were minor, they were small bore officials. Well, now it turns out, of course, that that's not true. And the third defense was, well, maybe there were contacts with the Russians, but they were just innocuous. And of course, Michael Flynn's contacts were anything but innocuous. But here is why this is so ominous for the president. First of all, you only strike a deal with someone if you can get a real information on others who are higher up. Who's higher up than Michael Flynn? Essentially two people, Vice President Mike Pence and President Donald Trump. You're not getting a plea out of Michael Flynn to get after some functionary in the White House. Secondly, we now know that Michael Flynn was not operating on his own. He was not a rogue operator. He was very much in touch with top transition officials and perhaps was even being instructed by those top transition officials. And by the way, who was the head of the transition team? None other than Vice President Michael Pence, who claims, I didn't know anything about what Mr. Flynn was doing. He lied to me. Well, maybe it turns out Mike Pence lied to the American people, and Mike Pence is in it up to his neck. But really, who is he going to implicate that's worth it to Bob Mueller other than Pence and Trump?
So let me ask you this. The general pleading guilty to lying to the FBI, does that mean collusion with the Russians, Allan?
No, lying to the FBI by itself is not collusion to the Russians. But look at the independent counsel could have charged him with a host of other crimes, financial crimes, non-disclosure crimes. And he could have been sent away to prison for 20 years. Obviously, Mueller, who's a very savvy prosecutor, is not going to plea that down to maybe no time at all unless Flynn is going to give him information that directly bears upon collusion with the Russians. And even the little tidbit we've gotten from the guilty plea about his being in touch with transition officials, being instructed by transition officials in his communications on sanctions with the Russians, that strongly smacks of collusion. And by the way, collusion's just a generic term. It's like bursitis, you know, a pain in my shoulder. But there are a host of crimes that could be involved here. You've all heard about the Logan Act. These were private citizens before the inauguration. It is against the law to be conducting foreign policy with foreign nations. There are laws, criminal laws, against taking anything of value from a foreign nation. And of course, there is treason. And, you know, the apologists say, well, it can't be treason because treason only can occur during a time of war. But Russia was clearly levying war against the United States. Maybe not with bombs and bullets, but certainly it was a cyber war. And there is now a doctrine in the Russian general staff saying cyber war is the warfare of the future. So a host of crimes could be implicated. And let me finally conclude with a point I've made so strongly in the case for impeachment and that others have echoed. To impeach a president, you don't have to prove an indictable crime. That's not a requirement. Judges, President Andrew Johnson, were impeached not for indictable criminal acts. You can be impeached for an abuse of power, and it can occur before you entered the White House if it directly implicates your presidency.
We want to show your book one last time, The Case for Impeachment, which was published in the spring of this year. Are we closer to this now, Allan, realistically, for Donald Trump?
You know, I have to say, I kind of pride myself as being a good predictor, but I'm astonished how virtually everything I said in the book is now coming to pass. Things, you know, that were very difficult to say back in April when I was being derided. Oh, you know, impeachment would never happen. It's so unusual. You don't have a case for it. I think I made a real strong case back then. And remarkably, everything I pointed out, particularly my whole chapter on the Russian connection, is coming to pass. I concluded my chapter by saying a Russian sword of Damocles is hanging over this administration. I have to say that sword is about to fall.
Allan, great to have you back with us as always today. We appreciate this on this Friday.
Anytime. Take care.